Thank you so much for joining, everyone. I'll jump right into it. We have Vednarayan Vedantam here. He's the SME business head at Razorpay. Veda has helped build and grow multiple digital products and brands across health tech, ed tech, and online travel. He possesses a varied mix of global experiences spanning from digital marketing, brand consulting, product marketing, and business development. He also consults early stage startups directly or through incubators on branding, digital marketing, and anything to do with product market fit and marketing, etc. He's This is one of my aspiring things to do, and I'm really glad to be associated with him right now because he's one of the visiting faculty members at various top B schools in the country, and he conducts programs on digital marketing, mobile marketing, influencer service marketing, etc. And he also happens to be a graduate from INSEAD Singapore CMO Academy. That's a member of India CMO Council Advisory Board, and a graduate from India's one of the top business schools, that's SPJMIR from Mumbai. Thank you so much for being here, Veda, and I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, thank you for that very flattering introduction, Vikrant. And hopefully I can live up to the build-up. A very good evening to all of the participants, whichever part of the country or whichever part of the world you're dialing in from. I hope all of you are safe and sound. I know we live in pretty unprecedented times. I hope all of your loved ones are safe and sound. Your colleagues, your co-workers, your employees, for all of the entrepreneurs who've joined us, I hope everybody's safe and sound. As Vikrant mentioned, I take care of the SME and the startup business practice at Razorpay, which today happens to be one of India's leading fintech brands, previously been a CMO for multiple startups, and serve as a marketing mentor with various startup acceleration programs. Let me just quickly share my screen. Are you able to see my screen? Vikrant, is it visible?
Yeah, it's visible.
Awesome. Okay, so over the next 20 minutes or so, what we'll do is we'll look at the great Indian digital story, not the story that all of us are used to hearing, but we look at a couple of very interesting inflection points that kind of slip below the radar, so to speak, and missed a lot of people's attention. And we look at what kind of implications that has for us as entrepreneurs, as SME and startup business owners. And at Razorpay, we take pride in the fact that we have a vantage position that gives us a ringside perspective into what's happening across the SME and the startup ecosystem across the country. And we'll give you a sense of what has been the impact of the pandemic on the SME and the startup ecosystem in general. We just do a quick sneak peek there. And then one of the consistent points of feedback that I often hear from various SMEs, various startups, is the fact that while they understand what the various aspects of digital marketing are conceptually, they know what SEO means, they know what SEM means, they know what Facebook advertising means. But what they struggle with is some kind of a prioritization framework that helps them make the decision on, for their business context, what needs to be the number one numero uno priority. Does it need to be Facebook? Does it need to be SEO? Does it need to be SEM? Can there be some simplified rules of thumb which they can use for navigating this entire digital jigsaw puzzle, so to speak? That's a popular question that I often hear, and that's something that we will hopefully decipher. This entire presentation is broken into two parts. The first part will focus on customer acquisition, correct, which is a key problem statement that most entrepreneurs, most marketers face. The second part will focus on engagement. How do you engage with people who are already a part of your funnel, and not just focus on acquiring newer and newer people? In the second part, we look at the engagement conundrum. We look at the use of marketing automation. I'll delve into experiences across the entire presentation, from my experiences in building and growing, Healthify Me, which today happens to be India's leading, health and fitness mobile app, and at Simplilearn, which today happens to be one of the world's leading edtech companies. So from an acquisition perspective and from an engagement perspective, we look at case studies from both of these experiences. And then towards the end, we'll talk about a topic which is very close to my heart, the topic about driving greater repeat business as part of your entire SME and your startup playbook. I'll look at, take us through a failure case study. I was during one of my earlier avatars where we couldn't actually turn around the repeat success story. I did believe it then, and I believe it even more now, that we learn a lot more from our failures than we do from our successes. So we'll go through that failure story, so to speak, and then we'll also look at how we manage to turn it around in the edtech scenario. And then towards the end, we'll just wrap up by looking at various kinds and ways and means by which you can actually build brand exposure for your brand and for your business. The great Indian digital story, all of us know that India is one of the world's top three digital economies, and both in terms of size and in terms of rate of growth. The number that you see in front of you is slightly dated. The current number stands at close to 250 million in terms of internet users in the country. But one of the things that slipped past a lot of people's attention is the fact that for the first time ever in the year 2019, the Google search via the browser was not the number one numero uno logical entry point for Indians looking to discover the World Wide Web. It was actually the Google Play Store app search, which was a very, very interesting thing. So in India, the context with Google and the term search engine is almost used synonymously, web search engine, so to speak. But for the first time ever, that monopoly was broken. The Play Store app search was the number one logical entry point for Indians looking to discover the World Wide Web, which has a lot of implications for us as entrepreneurs who are looking to start up, which means that you need to have a strong mobile app strategy in place. And if you want to market your app, you need a very strong mobile marketing strategy in place as well. The other thing, of course, all of us know that India is one of the world's largest markets when it comes to Facebook, very low and a young demographic quotient as well. But what a lot of people were not aware of is the fact that in the year 2019, this extremely popular symbol, which is the television icon, for the first time ever, actually slipped a few places down in this entire brand life cycle stream, which you see over here. So what you see here is the extremely popular stages across the entire brand life cycle that a customer or a prospect actually navigates across, right? So a brand initially, awareness gets seeded in the prospect's mind about a particular brand before it moves into the consideration phase, wherein the prospect starts considering a long list of brands before they evaluate a short list, and then the eventual act of purchase where they flip out their wallet, take out their card or cash, and they end up paying. So till the year 2019, despite the explosion of digital in the country, the television, the popular television set, the good old television set, was still the number one numero uno channel when it came to building brand awareness. In the year 2019, for the first time ever, television actually moved one step further down into more of a brand reinforcement or a consideration driver as opposed to an awareness seeder. And this change has been accelerated even more now in the year 2020 because of the pandemic, so to speak. And as you can see, all of these three popular digital icons, which need no introduction, they today in India are the number one awareness building mediums. Moving on, a quick sneak peek into what we have seen at Razorpay. At Razorpay, we often think of ourselves as an index fund that sits on top of the entire startup and SME ecosystem in the country. And at Razorpay, we've seen some very, very interesting winds of change because of the pandemic. Obviously, the months of March and April were tough for the entire country. But once the unlock phase actually started, we've seen a huge gravitation towards digital payments overall by the entire SME and the startup ecosystem across the length and breadth of the country. Intuitively enough, we've seen a huge boom from edtech, health tech, gaming, and IT SaaS companies, which is fairly intuitive enough. People are stuck at home. They want to upskill themselves, which explains the growth of edtech. They want to discover healthier and fitter versions of themselves, which explains the growth of health tech. They need virtual entertainment options, which explains the growth of gaming. And one of the interesting things has been the fact that a lot of these businesses, new businesses coming on board, SMEs coming on board, these are not people moving on from one competitive player to another. These are people who are first-time embracers or adopters of digital in general. It's not just about digital payments. Digital in general, these people are actually embracing for the first time, which is extremely interesting. We're seeing a huge adoption of businesses coming in from tier 2, tier 3 and below. I do believe that the next wave of entrepreneurial growth for India will not come from the Bangalores, the Hyderabad's, the Delhis, the Chennais, Mumbai's of the country, but it will actually come from tier 2, tier 3 and the rural hinterlands of the country, because that's where I believe the real entrepreneurial heartbeat of India resides. And the next wave of growth, so to speak, will come from tier 2, tier 3 and below. We are seeing a huge adoption and of digital payments by a lot of entrepreneurs who don't know anything about technology or about coding in general. So we're seeing a huge growth of what we internally call hashtag no-code products, like payment pages, payment links, etc., which even if you're an entrepreneur who does not have the luxury of using a developer or who does not know anything about technology, you can start using without the hassle of integration in under 5 minutes. And we've seen these winds of change, all of these growth patterns across the entire cycle of money movement, across both inward money movement, where we at Razorpay power and led businesses to be able to receive funds from their end customers through payment gateway, payment links, etc., and the outward money movement cycle, which Razorpay also powers through our Razorpay X platform, where we allow businesses to be able to pay out funds to their vendor partners, their employee salaries, etc. Some extremely interesting signs over the last 6, 7, 8 months post the pandemic and post since the start of the unlock phase of the pandemic. We're still very much in the midst of the pandemic. We've certainly not crossed it yet. And some extremely encouraging signs, not just for the fintech ecosystem, but for the entire entrepreneurial ecosystem in India and the SME ecosystem in India, as we crystal ball gaze over, towards the next 12 to 18 months. Shifting tracks, something that I mentioned earlier, COVID has almost been like a time warp, a time bubble of sorts, wherein the winds of change essentially have been accelerated. The kind of adoption wave that we might have expected to happen over 5 years has actually happened over 5 months, which has been an extremely interesting trend that has actually happened in India. And the pandemic has brought digital to the forefront. And going back to the first question that I was alluding to at the beginning of the presentation itself, in terms of helping entrepreneurs navigate the entire digital jigsaw puzzle and helping them solve the prioritization conundrum. How do I know if I need to make SEO my number one priority or Facebook? And it's not a question of either or, right? Obviously, you need to do a combination of efforts across different channels, for it to yield results. But one of the things that you need to keep in mind is the fact that SMEs and startups have limited resources. They've got limited time, limited money, limited people resources. So they need to know what needs to be their P0, number one priority. I'm a big fan of doing lesser number of things really well instead of trying to do a mediocre job of too many things. So a startup or an SME needs to know what their number one P0 go-to digital marketing channel needs to be. So what I'll try and hopefully communicate is some kind of rules of thumb or a very simplified framework that can help you make this decision. Well, first question, SEM versus SEO versus Facebook. Should I focus on search engine marketing? Should I focus on search engine optimization, which are all of the efforts that I undertake as an advertiser to get my landing pages, my website, to actually rank on Google's organic search ranking algorithm? And that is completely based on merit, right? Which is completely based on the strength of my content efforts, the strength of my search engine optimization efforts. Or should I focus on search engine marketing, where I actually spend money and I pay Google money for every click that actually comes through, where I actually bid for specific keywords and I actually bid certain amounts of money? I want to rank for, say, resorts in Kulu Manali, for example, or I want to rank for resorts in Shimoga, which is an awesome place in Karnataka. I can actually bid certain amounts of money for it. And if I come up on top, somebody actually clicks on my ad, I get charged some money by Google. SEO is, of course, completely organic. I don't have to pay anything. Plus, of course, Facebook advertising, all of us are aware of that. The first question you've got to ask yourself, should I make Google my number one priority? Should I focus on Facebook? Is this. You ask yourself the question, is the product or the category in which I operate in, is that mass or is that niche? That's the first question you've got to ask yourself. Now, there are two ways in which you can answer this question. You as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, have a gut-based instinct on the basis of which you can make this determination. You know that you sell t-shirts online, you're probably in a category which is fairly massy. You sell sherwanis online, you conduct online digital marketing certification programs, you know that you're fairly niche. So that is one way, the subjective way, the gut-based instinct approach. The second way is more objective, where you let data actually make that decision. You open up Google AdWords, which is a free tool. And within Google AdWords, you've got a keyword planner tool on which you can for what is the kind of demand patterns in existence for the category in which you are operating in. Try to see if there is already existing user behavior out there on Google. Now, not all of us can be Amazon or Flipkart, where we can create demand and we can spend billions of dollars in creating demand, but we can certainly get to piggyback on existing demand. So if you know that in the category that you operate in, and it is not a simple binary 0 to 1, it is a grayscale and it is not a perfect science. If there are more than, say, 10,000 searches in a given month for the category, the space, the exact core category you operate in, from your target geography, which I'm assuming is India in this case, you can assume for all practical purposes that you are fairly in a mass category. So if you are mass, that means that there is already existing latent and stated user demand for your product, for your category in the Google universe. So you might as well piggyback on it, right? You might as well try to build on top of that demand and get more brand awareness and get more traffic to your website, app installs if you're running an app-based business, etc. So if that is the case, if you're operating in a mass space, you prioritize Google. Now, if you're operating in a niche space, what do? You ask yourself another question. You don't just directly run into Facebook's arms. You ask yourself another question. Are you operating in a category which has a high personal connect, which has high engagement? And does it give you a lot of opportunity to inject a very strong visual element in your communications? For example, let me talk about my experiences at Healthify Me. When I first joined there, it was a big culture shock for me because for the first time ever in my career, Facebook was the number one dhanda driving performance marketing channel. It was not Google. Till such time, Facebook for me had always worked more as a brand building channel and never as a performance marketing, hard-working, dhanda-driving channel. But for the first time, Facebook was working well because why? The app, the business was enabling people to lose weight. It was enabling a young mother to lose post-pregnancy body fat. It was enabling a 40-something to overcome hypertension and rediscover a healthier and fitter version. It was enabling a 20-something to gain muscle and get a six-pack ab, right? So it was a brand, it was a product that struck a very strong personal connect with users. Plus, as a brand, all of the communication that we did was testimonial-led, wherein we had our customers narrate authentic retellings of the kind of transformation journeys that they had been through. So it was able to build very strong empathy with the target consumer. So high engagement, high personal connect, high visual element, health tech, proactive health tech, not the practo kind of reactive health tech, but proactive health tech, the kinds of health tech that Cult Fit and Healthify Me, for example, focus on. Fashion tech, all of these check off these boxes. So if you operate in a space like these, then you prioritize Facebook. And of course, you're operating in the B2B space as opposed to B2C, you replace Facebook by LinkedIn for the most part. Now, if you're niche, there is another scenario that comes through, which is possibly applicable for Razorpay. If you're niche, but you're low on engagement, what do? You're operating in a niche business, but the nature of the category itself is such that you are not able to establish a very strong personal connect. Like, for example, Razorpay, we operate in the space of B2B payments, payment gateways and business banking. Not quite like weight loss solutions, which strike a very strong personal connect, right? Nobody wakes up in the morning and says they want to start using a payment gateway. We are more of an enabler. So in terms of personal connect, it's fairly low. That's the nature of the category itself. Then what do? You focus, given the fact that I'm niche, you focus not just on your core set of keywords and the core set of user need states, but you also focus on neighboring keywords, which are slightly miscellaneous to the category you operate in, but still relevant for your target consumer persona. Who's my target consumer persona at Razorpay? Entrepreneurs, SME business owners like yourself. So what I do is I create content not just related to B2B payments and payment gateways, but for entrepreneurship overall as a larger topic, because that creates a larger catchment area for me. There are more people searching for keywords around entrepreneurship than there are people who are searching for keywords around B2B payments or fintech in general. So I go after that larger catchment area, which is still relevant for my target demography. I create content around how to read a P&L, how to read a balance sheet, how to grow your business through growth hacks, how to bootstrap your business, questions that first time and wannabe entrepreneurs would have, right? And then I try to get them into my brand consideration cycle, so to speak, and I include them as part of my funnel, and over a period of time try to nurture and engage them into payment gateway and Razorpay customers. So that's a playbook that I would recommend if you're operating in a niche space, like for example the Razorpay is, and which is not very high on personal connect. Yeah, I hope that helps. Just shifting track slightly, and let me just do a quick time check. I think we're doing all right in terms of time. Just shifting track slightly and moving our focus to lead engagement and nurturing. So far, we've kept our focus on customer acquisition. Now let's move our focus to lead engagement and nurturing. Now, lead engagement nurturing is the art of engaging and nurturing prospects who are already a part of your funnel. Let me give you an example. If you signed up as a lead, let's say Vikrant comes in and signs up as a lead on Simplilearn and he wants to learn digital marketing. The first day, Vikrant would get an email which says, welcome and congratulations on having taken the first step in your digital marketing certification journey. A few days after that, Vikrant would get another email which says, here are some latest and greatest blogs on digital marketing, and it'll gently nudge Vikrant to go read them. A few days after that, Vikrant would get another email which probably has a bunch of customer testimonials. A few days after that, Vikrant would get an invitation for a webinar like this one, which is being conducted by an industry expert, just for Vikrant to get greater credibility around the brand. And a few days after that, Vikrant might get a 20% discount code, which expires in 48 hours for Vikrant to go and make this purchase. Now, all of these set of interventions, these would be across email, across SMS, possibly browser notifications, WhatsApp even in this day. These communications are automated. All of the interventions that have happened to this prospect, which is Vikrant, are automated, and they are powered by something called as a marketing automation platform, which essentially automates all of these series of interventions based on a set of rules. Now, what you see here in front of you are a bunch of brands, which are some of the world's leading names in the marketing automation space. Obviously, HubSpot is the world's leader. Salesforce, which is a world leader in the CRM space, also has a marketing automation module. Acton, Marketo, a bunch of other names. Most of these would be fairly unaffordable for startups and SMEs. I would recommend some of these names, which are a lot more closer to home and a lot more value for money. Active Campaigns, and of course, our very own homegrown Zoho, WebEngage, and Freshmarketer from Freshworks, which are more value for money marketing automation platforms. Moving on, there are a couple of different ways in which engagement and nurturing can actually help your business. At Simply Learn, we know for a fact that our sales life cycle on an average is around 4 to 6 weeks, which means on an average, Vikrant, if he signs up, or multiple Vikrants, if they actually sign up as leads, they take anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks to become a paying customer. So as part of the example that I just gave you, when Vikrant actually signed up as a lead at Simply Learn, I used my engagement and nurturing efforts through a series of life cycle drip emailers, as they are called, very similar to water dripping off a tap, drip after drip after drip, powered by a marketing automation system to help convert Vikrant from being just a lead to a paying customer. So I used lead engagement and nurturing as part of the transaction lifecycle itself for driving conversions. The other way is, what if we are Domino's, for example, and Vikrant is trying to order online from Domino's and he's hungry and he's in a hurry. So you don't have the luxury of time at your disposal. Your average sales conversion cycle is barely 5 minutes at best. So what do you do then? That 5-minute time window is so short that you can't actually engage and nurture Vikrant and make a difference as part of that transaction's life cycle. But what you can do is, you know that Vikrant is a vegetarian who loves, say, paneer toppings. So what you can do is, you can, after the transaction is done, you can keep sending and you can keep engaging and nurturing Vikrant with a series of information on possibly the new pizza, paneer toppings that you have, the new kind of offerings that you have, etc., new kind of exotic paneer cuisine that you have. So the next time Vikrant is feeling lazy and he doesn't want to cook at home and he's hungry and he wants to order pizza online, Domino's is top of mind. So you can use engagement and nurturing in cases where the engagement cycle is too short for actually building stickiness, customer loyalty, and repeat behavior. Plus, of course, the other great way in which you can use engagement and nurturing is for refunneling users. So the classic marketing funnel is this, where you've got traffic on top, you've got leads in the middle, and then you've got paying customers at the bottom. We call it a funnel because people keep dropping off at various points in the funnel. So it gets narrow and narrow as you go, keep going further and further down. But what you can do quite often is you can try to refunnel people back into your funnel through engagement and nurturing efforts. For example, we used to do a lot of that at Healthify Me. We used to reactivate a lot of our hibernating cohorts, so to speak, cohorts of users who had the app, for example, installed on their phone, but who had not launched it. Instagram Lives were a great way for us to actually reactivate these cohorts. We used to have some very interesting piece of live content, getting one of our top nutritionists to talk about vegan diet, the dangers of crash dieting, keto diet, etc. And we used to use that as a hook for actually reactivating users. That's the third use of engagement and nurturing. I understand that most of you would be CEOs and you're not very comfortable with marketing jargon. You're probably a lot more comfortable with dhanda related terms, top line and bottom line. If I were to explain in very simple terms why you actually need engagement and nurturing, there are two very strong reasons. One is your sales team is going to be significantly more productive. Let's take a simple example. Vikrant runs a company with a 5-member inside sales team, each of whom can make 20 calls a day, and they work for 20 days a month, which means they can get in touch with 2,000 customers. Let's assume for simplicity reasons that each of these calls equals a unique customer outreach. So they can get in touch with 2,000 people in a given month. Let's assume, however, that Vikrant's company has a pipeline which is 10,000 prospects strong. Now, how can the sales team know which are the top 2,000 customers to get in touch with, and how can they utilize their time really well? Now, that's where the power of technology, the power of marketing automation, and the power of lead engagement and nurturing comes in. Wherein through engagement and nurturing efforts via email, via SMSs, etc., through marketing automation systems, the entire 10,000 can be reached out to. And through a concept which is called as lead scoring, you can actually score the kind of engagement that all of these prospects exhibit on emails. All of these prospects, are they attending webinars? Are they registering for webinars? Are they opening my emails? Are they visiting my pricing page? Using a variety of so many different variables, what you can do is create a holistic lead score on a scale of 0 to 100, which essentially gives you a sense of how probable or likely is this prospect to convert, to become actually a paying customer. Now, all Vikrant sales team now needs to do is to sort this list of 10,000 prospects in descending order of their lead score and call the top 2,000. So there are twin advantages here. One is obviously the sales team is spending time on those prospects who are most likely to convert, so their conversion rates go up, which has a direct impact on the top line. Plus, of course, you're not spam calling the remaining 8,000 folks who are not actually ready to make a purchase yet. The second reason, of course, something that I cannot underscore enough, is that what you need to understand is all of these marketing automation platforms, by a factor of 1,000 or 10,000, if not more, are by a factor of 10,000 or 1,000 are more cost effective than CPC, cost per click, and CPM, cost per 1,000 impression based platforms like a Facebook or Google. So they are significantly more cost effective channels for engaging and nurturing your audiences. which means that for the same amount of marketing dollars being spent or marketing rupees being spent, you can acquire more number of customers, which means your cost of customer acquisition, the CAC number, the holy grail, that actually comes down, which means your bottom line is going to look that much better. So two strong reasons, better top line and better bottom line for you to use engagement and nurturing. A quick pro tip.
Yeah. Veda, we'll have to have a time check. We have the next session starting in the next minute or so. Would you like to take one question? I think we have time for one question.
Sure.
So we have Abhi who's asking, what are some of the unconventional campaigns that have been successful for you?
Very interesting question. Why don't I show, jump over and give a sense of this particular video? Yeah. Since we're talking about unconventional campaigns, I think most of us would have heard of the Kollaveri D campaign. I think all of us have heard and enjoyed the Kollaveri D song, but not what a lot of people are not aware of is some of the backroom workings that went into making Kollaveri D the viral phenomenon that it actually became. Take a look at this video, which will hopefully answer that question.
Damn cool. Veda, can you please share this link on the chat as well so we can pick this up and watch it at a later time? Sure. Thank you so much for joining in. Unfortunately, we are out of time. But what I'll do is I'll take in all the questions that are there, and we'll probably send out an email and answer all of them. Thank you so much again, Veda, for having us. And we'll also share the YouTube video for the session within around 48 hours or so.
Sure. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and wish everybody good health. Stay safe. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye. See ya. Bye, guys.